Hello friends and welcome to another video. Today we're continuing the Impossible Challenge series, but we're cranking up the difficulty because quite frankly, the first one was a little too easy. So this time, we're going to try and beat Gran Turismo 2 without spending a single credit. That's right, no buying cars, no upgrading the cars. I knew that if I just tried to beat this game without buying a car, it would be far too easy as this game gives out a zillion prize cars that I could just sell for upgrade money. However, this challenge seemed far more interesting. This game has a number of horsepower restrictions that prevent you from just using any car you like, which means this challenge may very well not be possible. Can I chain together a series of prize cars that I cannot upgrade that will take me to the end of the game? There's only one way to find out. Just like the last challenge, the only way to a free car is through getting a gold time on all the tests for a particular license, and as you can see here, we are on B1, the usual start and stop tests that lead off every Gran Turismo license series, and this is in the Toyota Vitz. And that was my first awful attempt, and this is my second awful attempt. This game is different from the first Gran Turismo in that this has demonstration videos, which gives you an example or a replay of a gold-worthy time that you can use to improve your time. And so like a moron, I, despite knowing this, decided to do it my own way for a little while. Then after a couple more attempts, I finally came to my senses, watched the demonstration, and then got on this run. A 38.612, and that is our first gold, and this challenge is officially underway. Now we head on to B2, which is the same start and stop, but in a slightly faster car, conveniently called the Fiat Coupe. Maybe that's Coupe? I know normally the word is coupe, but in any case, it's a faster car, and you'll see on the bottom right of your screen there's a little dial. This game actually has a turbo boost meter, even though it does not have numbers on it, just has little dashes. It is a difference from this game compared to the first one. And here's something interesting. I slam on the brakes for my first attempt, and watch this. Car goes down to 0 miles an hour, but it keeps moving for a moment. And the timer didn't stop. I'm pretty sure I was in the zone when I stopped, so it was very strange to see the car move. Don't know if that's a glitch or what exactly that is, but did happen on a couple of attempts. But about 8 attempts later, I could not get gold on this one even after watching the demonstration video, and so I elected to skip this one, move on, and come back later. And so we move on to B3, which is a start and stop with an even faster car, an R34 Skyline. And once again, like a moron, I failed to watch the demonstration video. But before you see my terrible first braking attempt here in a moment, I just want to point out that there is a lot to cover in this video, and so I'm going to try and not bore you with all the license attempts that I did, like I did in the first challenge video. There's a lot to cover, so I may speed through some things. If you do or don't like the pacing, feel free to leave a comment. And by the way, like a genius, here I am watching the demonstration video. It only took me one attempt this time, and after this, it only took me 2 more attempts until I got this run. A 26.642, and that is gold prize number 2. We are 2/10 of the way there, and from here I think about it for a little bit and I decide, you know what, it's better for me just to grind out the second stop and start challenge before moving on. And so I go back to B2 and I watch the demonstration video a second time to see if I can figure out exactly where to brake. This car was very tricky to get this right. You would think this would be easy, but this took me a number of attempts. Rather than show you the end of the demonstration, I will say that 7 attempts later, I got on this run. By 7 thousandths of a second, we are finally gold on B2. So now we can move on to B4, which is our first challenge that involves cornering in Gran Turismo 2. It involves driving in a circle in a car called a Nissan March Gsharp? G-Pound? I think it'd be funnier if it was G-Pound. This game is old enough for it to be G-Pound, but it's probably G-Sharp like a music note. Now, you might think driving in a circle with a car would be easy, but you can see that I am basically tapping the left stick. I'm not very good at finessing controller sticks. I never have been, which is why I'm not a great first-person shooter player. My first attempt is a 24-260, which is barely not silver, but we need to cut over half a second off of that. And then true to form, I didn't watch the demonstration video once again until I had done this 3 or 4 times. And then finally, 6 attempts later, I went and changed my control scheme because the left stick did not feel good to use. It felt like it was sluggish. And so I went and changed it to the D-pad, and then the very next run after changing the controls to the D-pad, just like I used when I played this game as a kid, I got this run. A 23.564, and that is gold number 4. We are slowly but surely getting there. So now I'm going to move on to B5, which is the same thing but in a faster car, and on my very first attempt, well, see it for yourself. It's a first try gold, and not only that, but it's 3.5 tenths under the gold time. I was so surprised at how fast I did that. I pondered looking up what the world record for that license test is, but it's probably better than that. But we switched to D-pad and we have 2 golds in a row. That can't surely keep going, right? Well, if you bet the streak would end, you were right. And if you bet that it wouldn't end, your check is in the mail. Real quick, I want to explain, as I show the next attempt at this, what my thinking was for how to make the D-pad work in this game and the driving tests and the racing and things like that. The idea is to find the speed at which you can just hold down the D-pad and the throttle at the same time without having to feather anything. Now, you can't do this in every car, but especially for the slower ones, you can try to find that optimal speed through a corner. And it feels very satisfying when you can get that right. So we get to within 2/10 of the gold on this attempt. It feels very satisfying when you get it right because you know you pretty much can't go any faster through that corner. But it's really hard to consistently do that because your throttle and brake are once again on and off switches. And the D-pad pretty much does that as well with a little bit of turn smoothing. But on our third attempt, let's see how this one goes. It's a 24.504, and that is gold number 6. So far, this really hasn't been as hard as Gran Turismo 1's license test. Some of those were brutal. Some of that was also getting used to the physics, which I am obviously a lot more used to now that I've started playing this game and played through all of the first Gran Turismo. So this is B7. This is the same left-hander, but in a faster car. This is a Honda Integra. Can't just whip it through the corner like I did the previous car, the Mazda Demio, although I do try on this attempt to do that. One thing about this game that really frustrates me is that you don't get any kind of countdown when the car starts at anything greater than 0 miles an hour. It just goes from blank screen to, oh look, you're in the race. And even worse, most of the time, the manual transmission, you start off at the limiter, and so you bounce off the limiter as soon as the thing starts. And so I believe for a couple of these, I ended up just switching to automatic so that it would shift immediately because there was no way a human could react fast enough if you didn't know exactly when it was going to be. They have since ironed that out, but in this game, looks like they were experimenting on a lot of things. And you can see I'm having a little bit of trouble. There are times when I would be a few tenths off the gold time and I would think, oh man, how am I going to lower this time by a few tenths? And you kind of just have to keep trying and trying and trying and trying again until you get the attempt you want. Like this one, 6 attempts later. A 26.92, and that is gold number 7. We have 3 more golds to get, and then we will have our first free car for Gran Turismo 2. B8 is essentially the same thing as B7, just with a right turn, and all of my UK friends will appreciate it when I say that this one ended up being difficult for me. As an American, I only know how to make left turns, at least according to them. In any case, it's the Integra with a similar right turn. The gold time is a little bit higher than in the previous test, but it's basically the same thing as you just saw. And the first attempt will be a 24.0. So I have to knock off 7 tenths from that. And as you can imagine, on a pad, it's not very easy. And we'll jump ahead 13 attempts later. We get on this run. It's a 23.229, and that is gold number 8. And you could see if you were watching the D-pad on that one, how I tried to get to a point, like I had said before, where I'm just holding the gas and the D-pad at the same time and not really trying to do anything else. And then at the end, I kind of machine gun tap the D-pad to get the steering angle to be nuanced just in the right way so that I get the steering angle I want from the tires. It's not easy doing this. It is definitely not. I just found it to be a little more controllable for me personally, but either way, playing on these old games is not easy, and we're on to B9 where we have our first left-right combination of all the tests in the Ford Cougar, which Americans may know as we look at the car. It was the Mercury Cougar here in the States. First attempt was a 24-1. This test and B10 are pretty much the same thing, except B10 you start at a faster speed, and this was tricky because you have to get your speed exactly right on the first left-hander so that you can really open up the throttle and hold the D-pad down for the following right-hander. And you can see I'm really struggling to find that exact pace and weight transfer to get good speed through the shift from the left to right. I was talking with a friend recently about the differences between being on a pad and a wheel, and on a wheel you can be so smooth in these situations, whereas on pad, especially on D-pad in these older games, you're basically trying to jam the steering over and over again. You can't really be smooth no matter how badly you want to be on D-pad because it's just not how it works. And so when you're trying to get gold on an S-turn combination like this, it's really difficult to get it all right because the weight transfer is very heavy and sudden when you're using the D-pad. And on a game that's as slidey as these older Gran Turismo games, it makes it really hard to get it right. Even that, which I felt was decent, was still 4/10 off the pace. Fortunately, I did figure this out only after 4 more attempts, where we have this run. The 23,448, and that is gold number 9. We are 1 gold away from our first free car, and the challenge can then start in earnest, but we have 1 more test to go. Fortunately, we've basically seen this before, but it is at a higher speed in the Mercury Cougar. Rather than show you this many more times, I want you to have a guess at how many attempts you think this took me. The last one took me 6 or 7 attempts. This is basically the same test, just a little bit faster, so you think it wouldn't take me that long, right? Well, if you'd like, pause the video and leave a comment as to how many attempts you think it took me. Got a number? Good. I will spare you all the attempts of me struggling and just say that 23 attempts later, I got on this run. It's a 20-103. We beat it by 2/10, and finally, after about 75 real-life minutes, we have our very first free car. But skip saving the game. Let's go see what the car is. All right, it's a Spoon S2000, and looking at the specs, 269 horsepower, 2,425 pounds. One of the things I do remember about this game is that there is a series of races that have a 295 horsepower restriction. This car might be usable for that, and that means that maybe this challenge can seriously begin, but now is when I want to do a little bit of research on finding out, okay, what kind of prize cars can I get? What kind of horsepower restrictions are there? Things like that. One thing about this challenge, if the game allows it, I consider it good in terms of this challenge, because things like, oh, I have to have a historic car for the historic car challenge, etc., etc. That kind of thing is definitely impossible. So if the game allows it, I consider it valid. So we're going to see, we're going to start scouting out, okay, what kind of cars do I need? What can I get from various events, etc., to see if we really can make this impossible challenge possible. But first, you get to see me be a doofus once again. I like to show the authenticity of these runs. The national challenges require other licenses than just the B1. I got a free car and I'm thinking, oh, it's time for me to do the challenge. No, I have to do the other licenses first. And so I will skip through all that, and you'll just have to trust me, bro, when I say I got the rest of the licenses. I didn't get gold on all of them, because that wasn't necessary, at least not yet anyway. And so, here we are, with our International A license. Now, we are ready to tackle the challenge. And from here, the video is going to shift a little bit to where it's a little bit less of the driving and a little bit more of what I was thinking when I tried to attempt this. So we have a car that I think is viable in the 295 horsepower series of events, which there are a lot. And so I'm testing my luck at the first one at Midfield Raceway in the Japan National Challenge. I have no idea if this car is actually viable, but we're going to give it a shot and just see. I do have backup strategies. I mean, there are 6 total cars I can get from getting gold on all the license tests, although that will be quite a monumental task if indeed it does come down to that. But there are a number of cars ranging from this S2000 to full-blown race cars that I can get, so I think that is a possibility. But it looks like here in this race, we're not getting left behind. We are slowly making our way to the front. And as you'll see here, we're just going to jump ahead and see. I did end up winning this race, so I felt like, yes, the S2000 is viable in a 295 horsepower category. But the national races in the Gran Turismo Cup don't give prize cars. So I know the S2000 will work in the 295 horsepower category, but that's not going to solve my problem of needing more cars. So you see me slowly going through the menus. I had a prize car list up at this point, I believe. I don't remember if I did or not, but I do know that the S2000 is an FR car, and as we go to the FR Challenge, you'll see that there is a 295 horsepower FR car race. Now, the problem with this challenge is that, yes, there are lots of prize cars in this game. However, usually the car that you get is worse than the car that you're using. And so in order for this challenge to be possible, I have to find races where the car that I use gets me a prize car that is better than the car that I'm using. But I don't know at this point if that's even possible. I've only briefly looked at the prize car list. We're going to go ahead and jump to the end of this race where I did win this one as well with the Spoon S2000. And this time we do get a prize car. It is a SIL 80. So, as I said, this is a worse car than the car I was using, but it does fill an important category because there is a 245 horsepower category, which the Spoon S2000 does not meet the criteria for. So from here, I start looking around, looking at the prize list. A lot of these cars, I don't remember how powerful they are, and so I have to do a lot of feeling out of these things. I don't know all the horsepower requirements. I didn't have a list for that. I only had a prize car list, and so I'm just looking around and seeing. At this point, I'm just kind of seeing what I can win with the S2000. I know that pretty much any 295 horsepower race I can win, but I don't know. I have the prize car list. I don't know how powerful some of these cars are. I'm just trying to get an idea to see what's out there. You know, there's no harm in trying this, basically, was the rationale here. So you're going to see an S2000 race against some compact cars, and as you can imagine, I won this one pretty easily. And with this, we have prize car number 2, but it's from the compact car series, so it may not be all that good. Let's check it out and see what it is. It is a Volkswagen Lupo. It has 73 horsepower. That is a complete bust. That was a waste of 5 minutes. That car is virtually going to be unhelpful. And so I know at this point, this isn't going to work. I have got to figure something else out. In fact, you can see me pause on this for a while. I took a look at the prize car list and was trying to figure out my options. You know, yes, I have 2 cars that will win 2 categories, but there are a lot of categories in this game, and it's unlikely that these 2 cars will be able to stretch much higher than the categories they're already in. So you can see me poking again in the menus and going to the 80 Sports Car Cup, and for those of you who are in the know, you know why I am looking at this particular page 2 of the 80 Sports Car Cup. But it's a 394 horsepower category. And I think about giving the 80 Sports Car Cup 5th race a go, and then I decide, you know what, no, there's no way the S2000 can handle that. It's over 100 horsepower higher than its horsepower, so it's just not going to be able to keep up. So I go back to the prize car list again, and I start trying to figure out, okay, what are the horsepower requirements for some of these good cars that I'm looking up, or the good prize cars that I'm looking up? You know, are any of them free? Do they have certain horsepower requirements? And I know that sometimes watching menuing can be a little boring as a viewer, but this was what I was doing kind of in real time, if you will. I was just trying to figure out, okay, what options do I have? You know, and the ones that are free, there's no way that the S2000 is going to win these. And so now I'm just like trying to use what I can see in these lineups here and the prize car list and just see if there's any way I can chain this together. And then I notice on the prize list a series of races I didn't want to look at, which were endurance races. A lot of the endurance race prize cars were really good, but I had thought that those would all be for more powerful cars. And then the first endurance race I clicked on had a 295 horsepower requirement, and I could not believe my eyes. And you can see once again, I paused on this screen. I could not believe, not only was this a 295 horsepower one, it was the first one I clicked on. And so now I was curious, okay, what kind of cars might I be going against? Because it could be that they have 275 horsepower and weigh 1,500 pounds, and they're just going to be way, way too fast for the S2000. And so Gran Turismo 2 has this little replay functionality that actually lets you watch a demo of the race. And so you can see, here are the cars that we're going against, and they look pretty tame, actually. So, okay, you know, I watch it for a few seconds, I get an idea for what the cars are, and I quit out, and I think, I might actually be able to win this, and there is a useful car waiting at the end of this race. But I decide before I just jump in to the Trial Mountain race, I want to cover all my bases and check out what the horsepower requirements are for the rest of the endurance races, and then I eventually move on to some of the other races in the Gran Turismo League, just trying to get an idea for what kind of horsepower requirements I have that I will need to fill once I win this Trial Mountain race, if I win this Trial Mountain race. So after a little bit more menuing, I decide, all right, it's time to do the race. It's only 30 laps. I'm not familiar with tires in this game. I have just the, as my UK friends like to say, the bog standard tires. Don't know what that means in this game, but it's 30 laps. I think I can handle it. Let's just see what happens, because a potentially really good car awaits at the end of this challenge. And immediately you can see I'm thrown into a race. No rolling start, no grid start, no nothing. A little bit of a nudge from me. I do try to keep these challenges as clean as possible without just bulldozing the AI. I feel like it's not fair if I just run the AI off the track and drive away with it. That's not very fun. So you can see on this game on the right hand side there's tires. The tires are blue when they're cold, which I thought was interesting, and then they turn green and then yellow and then eventually red. That's how it was, I think, for a while. I don't know when that changed, but I do seem to recall that being a thing in my childhood. So you can see here on lap 1, the lead car is getting away a little bit, which is a little concerning. It looked like it was a Lotus Elise, which is going to be roughly similar power, but it might be lighter So we're going to have to try and use what power advantage we might have here on this long back straight. And another thing is, I don't know how long these tires are going to last. I don't know how long the AI's tires last. So that's kind of the challenge here. I kind of have to drive this 30-lap race knowing it's possible I might lose, which is a really scary prospect if you value your time. But me being this close, less than a second behind, I feel like as I warm up to this combo, I'll be able to catch the AI, and you can see I've taken a chunk out of the time here. So I'm thinking, okay, you know what? This is winnable, I think, but if I get past the AI, I need to get a gap because I really don't know what kind of tire life they might have, etc. There's no fuel use in this game. It was just tires. And so you can see I'm into P1. I'm starting to pull away. I'm starting to get warmed up to this combination. And really from here, it actually wasn't that much of a challenge. But I'm going to show you my pit entry because I had not practiced that at all. The tires fortunately went about halfway before I felt like they needed to be changed. And so here is my pit entry. If we can be honest, that was some absolutely shameful driving from me. I'm sure the guys in the garage really appreciated one half of a functional S2000 coming down the pit lane where the right side was perfectly fine and the left side looked like it had been punched by Godzilla. But in any case, pretty quick pit stops here. Still in P1 going into lap 16, and at this point I felt like, well, even if the AI doesn't change tires at all, it'll be an easy victory. And as we fast forward to the end of the race, it was indeed an easy victory. You saw at the end there where I kind of drove through an AI car. One of the AI cars got stuck with about 3 laps to go right at the start-finish line, and it just stopped moving. It was like it tried to back up and then go forward, but it just kept driving into the wall. It was very funny. But in any case, we have done the Trial Mountain 30 laps. And so we have our next prize car, and I teased that it was useful, but what is it? It's a Supra race car. 686 horsepower, 2,500 pounds. This car broke this challenge wide open. Or so I'd like to say. You might think this challenge is over. I have a powerful, awesome car. You would be wrong. There is still a lot to do here. There are still a lot of lower horsepower requirements that I still have to get cars for, and it's entirely possible that this car is so fast and the free challenges give cars that are so high in horsepower that I still might not be able to complete the challenge. So there is still some thinking that has to go on and some strategy that is still in play with this challenge. So believe me when I say that this challenge was far from over, although this car does open up a lot of possibilities. A lot of the free, the tuned Turbo Car Cup, Gran Turismo All-Stars. This car can win any of those races. And with the prize car list up, and with me looking at it, I decide to start going for some of these other free challenges with the Supra to see what cars I can get that may or may not fit into other categories. So this is the tuned Turbo Car Cup at Test Course, which is not a thing anymore in Gran Turismo 7, something closer to Special Stage Route X. This is not a thing in Gran Turismo 7. You might remember that one of the cars in here is the 1,000 horsepower drag, I believe it's the 180 SX. And I do recall that while it is very fast in a straight line, it doesn't turn very well on these high banked turns. And so as we jump ahead to the end of the race, you'll see that despite a 1,000 horsepower car being in here, did not matter. The Supra was able to take care of business. This gives one of 3 cars, and I wasn't sure which of the 3 I would get, but as we check out the garage, you'll see that it's the Skyline drag car, which is also a 1,000 horsepower car and is a complete bust. But I did know that there was one car out of the three that I needed, or at least could use. I didn't know exactly how powerful it was, but it seemed usable, and so I wanted to get it. So I did this again, and I got another Skyline drag car. And from here I say, the heck with it. Let me go get a car where I know what race it's on. And I go do one of the Gran Turismo All-Stars race. The first one at Super Speedway. Super Speedway is not in Gran Turismo 7 either. Well, I guess it sort of is, but the actual Speedway itself is not in Gran Turismo 7. There is a small oval in Gran Turismo 7, but it's not the same one. This was an easy win for me, and I just wanted to continue to rack up my prize car collection so that I had more options to go forward with. And as we hop back over to the garage, we will see that the new car is a Mines Lancer Evolution 5, which has 413 horsepower and only weighs 2,380 pounds. So, this car will fill a very small but important niche for me, as there is a horsepower requirement of 443, which we'll get to in a moment as you see me doing some more menuing. I am trying to scout out horsepower restrictions once again. 493 on the Super Touring car, that's probably too high for the Mines Lancer Evo 5. I felt like it was too high. I was just trying to get an idea for what it might be. Plus, it is also a tuned street car. That might matter in the Super Touring Challenge. So we're looking around, looking at the four-wheel drive cars. Unfortunately, none of the challenges really fit the Evo 5. I actually thought the 690 horsepower requirement was a little ridiculous. I was a little surprised to see it that high, but again, no tuning allowed for me, so maybe that would be easily gotten if I could tune. So we look around some more, looking at various other things. The Muscle Car Cup, those probably aren't race cars, but are those really going to help me? I have the car prize list. I look at it. Maybe they'll help me. It's just a matter of trying to figure all this out. I look at the luxury sedans. Nothing close to 413. On to the Historic Car Cup. Nothing close to 413. Moving on. The Pure Sports Car Cup. And there is a race at Deep Forest with 443 horsepower restriction. That looks like one of the few, if not the only race to line up with the Evo 5. So we're going to give it a shot. So this race in particular was kind of a warning shot across my proverbial bow of what was to come in this challenge. So the Mines Lancer Evolution 5, four-wheel drive, lots of power. I bonked that car. Not doing a very good job driving. If you want to see some shameful driving, just watch this race, or what you're going to see of it anyway. So I'm going through this game. You know, I know Deep Forest pretty well. It's not that far from what the Gran Turismo 7 one is like. Not super familiar with the car. I just got it. And, yep, we're going off the track. We almost crash. Then we get rammed from behind by the car there, weaving all over the place, just absolutely abhorrent driving. And look, we're just going to do a classic Gran Turismo 7 move of push to pass using the person as a guardrail. And if that were a human, they probably wouldn't be too happy with me. I hit the wall again and get past. Absolutely shameful driving. Unfortunately for me, and fortunately for those, look, I hit the AI again. Fortunately for those who enjoy clean driving, the Gran Turismo gods, or as we like to say, Mr. Turismo, was getting ready to strike me down with his bare hand. I go off the track, I start spinning, I lose control, hit the wall, spin around again, and then I get hit head on and decide, yep, this is a shameful race. Let's try this again. So I know that if I just keep this thing on the track, it's probably faster than everything in here. I just need to keep it on the track. And as we start attempt number 2, we go flying off the line again, trying to cut through everybody. Much cleaner start this time. And I'll spare you the race. This one was much easier. I even ended it in third person mode. We win. the 443 horsepower restriction race here with the Evo 5. Let's hop over to the garage and see what car we get. It's a Tommy Kyra ZZ3. Now, it only has 184 horsepower, so you might think this car is not very significant, but if you were paying attention earlier in the video, one of the national challenges is 197 horsepower. But instead, I decide to hop back in the Supra and go searching for some other cars with all these free categories open. And so here I start with the first muscle car race, Seattle Short. I figure the Supra should make quick work of this, and as we jump ahead, yes it did. But rather than go check out what we got in the garage, we're going to do the Laguna Seca race, which we won easily once again. And now, after this race, we can go check out the two new cars we have. We go back to the garage, you'll see that we have a PT Spider and a Phaeton. The PT Spider has 221 horsepower, so that car is pretty much a bust since I already have the Silady, but the Phaeton has 502 horsepower, but it weighs 3,500 pounds. More of a luxury car. Maybe a little too heavy to be of any use, but we have it, and so now we move forward. And so we head into the final muscle car race, and you can see once again the Supra takes care of that easily. And as we head back into the garage for the final muscle car prize car, I knew what the car was because I had the list, but I wasn't sure how powerful it was. The Shelby Cobra 427, 423 horsepower is way more than I was expecting. I was expecting something closer to maybe 325. So that car actually ends up being a bust because I already have the Lancer Evo for the 443 category, and the car for the 443 FR car isn't something that I think is going to be helpful. So the Shelby Cobra is actually a bust. So I do a little bit more menuing here, just trying to figure out, okay, what horsepower restrictions are out there versus what cars do I have. And admittedly, part of this was because I couldn't remember every single race's horsepower restriction or every car that I had, what horsepower they had. You know, I condensed this down into not a short video, but a video that is much shorter than the amount of time that this took, and this was across several days, so sometimes you just don't remember everything. And so I finally settle on the Phaeton, and it's kind of a boat, but we'll see. There is one race I want to try with it, and you'll see as I do a little bit more menuing. It's in the Luxury Sedan Cup, the high speed ring. Still, it's 500 horsepower versus a 591 restriction, and this thing weighs a lot. I don't know how this is going to go, but let's find out. So it only has 4 gears, which I found to be interesting. And immediately you can see off the line, I am getting left behind. But it's high speed ring and it's an easy track. So maybe I can use this car's horsepower to catch up. But here in the beginning, you can see the car just won't turn. I bounce off the wall, and immediately I'm like, oh, if I can't make that corner, there's no way I'm going to be able to make the rest of the corners. I try to slow down for this left-hander, bounce off the wall again. I am catching the AI just a little bit. We go into one of my favorite sections of any Gran Turismo track because of how the replay camera shows this. Just trying to creep around these corners, but I'm not actually losing time to them through the S's there. Now we go into this slight right-hander, into the final left-hander. I'm within shouting distance of the AI, still 2 seconds behind. But here you can see I slide up into the wall, and now I almost feel like I'm breaking my own rules of trying to be clean. I do catch the AI here, and we'll use the toe, which is also extremely strong in this game, just like it is in the first one. Now let's see if we can make it around this left-hander. I try to take a wide line, and you can see I'm understeering a little bit, bouncing off the AI. And then I slide up into the wall, and I decide, you know what, this isn't working. This is, if I'm not going to overtake them here, normally, without bouncing off the wall, it's not worth doing. So essentially at this point, the Phaeton is a bust. which isn't a big deal because I have another car in mind for the 590 horsepower range, but it would have been nice to have a car now that would have given me an opportunity in those 590 races. Unfortunately, the Phaeton is just not going to do it. It's too heavy. It's too much of a boat. I can't get it to turn the way that I want. So we're going to go back to the Supra. There's a car in the prize list that caught my eye, and I initially didn't think about it because there's a race car version of it, which is absolutely not going to help. But we're going to try the Gran Turismo All-Stars race at Laguna Seca, and unsurprisingly, we're going to jump ahead to the final lap and see that we've won it easily. As per usual, this Supra is about as good as any race car there is in the game. And while the race may have seemed close, it really wasn't all that close. So now we jump back to the garage, and we have the Nissan R390 road car, and look at that. Bingo. 351 horsepower. That is going to be perfect. It's 2,200 pounds. It's light. It is going to be perfect for the next race I do, and you can see I make a beeline to the 80s Sports Car Cup 5th race, which those of you who have played this game before know exactly what car we're going to get out of this. Here we go. 394 horsepower. This car, the road car version of a Nissan, should be perfect for this race. And as we jump ahead to the end, you can see, yes, it was. Now, what car will we get from this race? I pointed the specific race out earlier in the video. What car is it? Gran Turismo 7 fans will know this one. It is the Skyline Super Silhouette. The first time it showed up in the Gran Turismo series was in this game. Should look familiar to you Gran Turismo 7 players. 555 horsepower, 2,100 pounds. It is a true race car from the 80s. And it is going to be the car that wins us one of the Euro Pacific series in the Gran Turismo League. But for now, I'm going to hop in the ZZ3 and start knocking out some of the 197 horsepower challenges in the Gran Turismo League. I want to get an idea for what cars I still need to get, and we'll quickly go through these 3 races. You can see this was race 1 in the Japan National at Midfield Raceway. Then we jump to race 2 in the UK National at Trial Mountain. That race also pretty easily won. And then last on the list for the ZZ3 is the Italian Nationals at Rome Short. And just like the other 2 races, this one was also easily won. And so that does it for the 197 horsepower races. The ZZ3 comes through, and that is a small chunk of the challenge completed. From here, we're going to move on to the Spoon S2000 and knock out some of the other challenges that involve the 295 horsepower category. First up with the S2000 is the US National race at Laguna Seca. It's funny, some of my teammates and I at Apex Hunter Racing were talking earlier. This is the only real-life track in Gran Turismo 2. It's funny to say that now, knowing how many are in Gran Turismo 7. I thought that was pretty interesting. We jump ahead to the end of the race, another easy victory. I do want to point out real quick that most of the races I was able to complete in this challenge, they weren't that hard. It was just about finding the right car to work with that horsepower restriction. I recognize that this video is really long and that may or may not make it more or less entertaining. I just tried to tell the story of how to see if completing this puzzle was even possible. The AI is not very remarkable in this game. It's all about just seeing if it's even possible. Some people may not like that. Some people may be bored. You know what? That's okay. I have content planned that hopefully will entertain everybody. But in the meantime, let's carry on. This is the French National race at Tahiti Road. Another easy victory for the S2000. Next up is the second of the 2 Italian National races with the S2000 at Rome Circuit Full Course. Another victory. And that is the Italian National Challenge done. So we are starting to fill out the National Challenge sheet. We are getting closer. Next up is the first German National race with the S2000. At Deep Forest, another easy victory, big surprise there. That is the last race we will do with the Spoon S2000. It has served me extremely well, and we got it for free. Now we're going to swap over to the Sil 80. Fun fact, it's called a Sil 80 because it has parts from a Silvia and parts from a 180 SX, hence the name Sil 80. So the first race is going to be the Laguna Seca US National Race at 245 horsepower. As you can see, another easy victory. Going to try and speed along through some of these other races. Race number 2 in the Sil 80 is the German National Race. 216 horsepower at Deep Forest, easily conquered by the Sil 80. Then we move on to the third and final race that we will be doing in this car, the first French National Race, 246 horsepower at Tahiti Road. Once again, another easy victory for the Sil 80, and that is all the racing we need to do with this car. And so, there are only 2 sets of horsepower restrictions left, 394 and 345. So we have the R390, which we know can win the 394 races. And we hop over to the first one, the US, another easy victory at Laguna Seca. Now we go on to the second race, which is the UK National at Trial Mountain. And I just want to show that not every single race was a cakewalk or mistake-free. Whoops. But we try again, and we get another easy victory. There is actually one more category I forgot about. It is 443 horsepower, but the R390 is so good, I give it a try, and I win that one pretty easily as well. And with that, there are 2 national races left at 345 horsepower. And friends, I just want to tell you, as you see me do some menuing here, my challenge almost ended right here. Yes, this is the last hurdle. To be completely open and honest with everyone, this is the last hurdle to beating the game. I have cars for the other races, or I can get them easily enough. But I did not have a car for the 345 horsepower, and so, as you saw on your screen, I went with the third race in the Station Wagon Cup. Now let's see what car that gives us as we go back home and check out our garage. It is a Stagia? I don't know how that's pronounced. 343 horsepower, but look at that weight, 3,791 pounds. And as we hop into the first race at Midfield Raceway, I thought that the horsepower being close to the restriction would help, but the car is so heavy, I was a little concerned that I might not be able to handle it. So let's see what happens here in this first race. I get a decent jump off the line. You can see this car has a big turbo in it as well. But I'm not making up a ton of ground after the good start. Let's see what happens here into turn 1. On the brakes, try to keep it clean on the inside, use as much of the track as I can. Up in to third place for the moment. See if this car's horsepower can carry me through this long backstretch here. Still one more car to go. We are up into P2. There's a car right next to me though on the left-hand side. I am jostling it for space, and it's not giving me much room. I don't even know where the braking point is. I just kind of throw the car in there, hard on the throttle. This car's gears are really tall. See how the car slid as well? Kind of a concern, but we're doing okay. We're only half second behind P1. This left-hander really killed me with how heavy the car was. I had to really let off in order to keep the momentum going. Now, this is a little tricky left-right combo. See what happens. I get on the curb, I get it wrong, and around we go. Next race, we try it again. We're behind a Supra this time. Same car. We navigate the S's a little bit better. Hard on the brakes into the final hairpin. Didn't really gain or lose any ground. So now we're going to come up to another little S combination here before we go on the front stretch. See if maybe we can use the slipstream to gain an advantage on the Supra here. The slipstream in this game in the Gran Turismo 1 is extremely strong if you remember my first video about it. here we go. So we're in the toe of the Supra. Only a 2-lap race, so it's not a huge time investment if I don't win this. But you can see I'm not gaining any ground at all. Really, the people behind me aren't either. And then I send it on a massively late lunge, which I'm sure a lot of folks would not appreciate. I get it wrong, get in the dirt, and that's a wrap. Couldn't do it there either. So now I'm thinking, okay, this car's not going to work after all. It's too heavy. Maybe if I practiced with it, I could do it, but I wasn't feeling great about it, especially since the car's not winning at Midfield Raceway, therefore it's not going to win at the other race. So at this point, I started looking at other options. I've cut out a lot of the menuing that I did. We're going to hop in the Super Silhouette, and we're going to go back to the luxury sedan race that I failed with earlier in the video in the Phaeton, this time in a much better car. And we'll be able to knock that out easily. I had a couple of backup options. This was the lesser annoying to get of the two. And as you can imagine, a group of luxury sedans are going to get smoked by an actual race car. So we win that one easily. Now, let's go see what car we got. It's a very strangely named GTR 4-door tuned by Nismo. 293 horsepower, 3,439 pounds. Honestly, from a power to weight ratio, this car is not that much better than the station wagon. I didn't do the math, but you can kind of eyeball it and you're like, wow, that car is still really heavy. Yeah, this car was a backup plan. I didn't say it was a good one. It also looks really interesting in that it looks like it has an R32 rear end and an R33 front end. I had never seen this car before. I don't think I'd ever gotten it, or at least that I remember anyway, in playing it before. But it's going to have to work. So we're going to have a go at Midfield Raceway in this GTR and see what happens. I haven't shown any full races for most of this video just because I knew this video would be long. First things you can see, I'm examining this car because I had noticed at the time it had an R33 front end and an R32 looking back end, and I thought that was interesting. But in any case, in turn 1, 3 of the AI go off the track, so we're up into P3. Here's an example of the AI pretending that you don't exist again. I'm going to try to go side by side with this RX-7. I kind of left it space, and I just got shoved almost completely off the track. And so when the RX-7 squeezed itself off the track, I did not feel any remorse whatsoever. Still have no idea what the braking point is for this corner. And you can see the GTR just bogs down here. Bogs down. It felt like I was driving a boat, just a slightly better boat than the station wagon. The AI was really bad through this long left-hander. Fortunately, the GTR held it a lot better than the station wagon did. And so we get a run on the Evo. We're going to take P1 through the tricky S's here. I slow down a little bit to give myself plenty of space. Down into second gear, through the final hairpin. Here we go. The AI is still very close to me, but we are in P1 for the time being. Jumping ahead to the end of the start-finish straight, I brake slightly late and get it wrong and try to use the four-wheel drive to pull the car through the corner, but I don't do a very good job. And now the AI is right on top of me, and I go down into P2 behind the RX-7, and I'm in a dogfight now in the backup car of all things. Still not very far behind, but I am losing ground to the RX-7 still. If this car does not work, I only have one more car to use, which I think is actually a little better than the GTR. It was just a little more annoying to get. So we will see. We're coming into the big sweeping left-hander that I was able to pass the Evo on. The RX-7 doesn't handle it very well and kind of turns into me a little bit. We play a little classic NASCAR, and then I take the lead one more time through the tricky S's on lap 2. I slow down, use the whole track, hard on the brakes into the hairpin, and we are free and clear. Skipping ahead to the end of the lap, we win the first of the 2 remaining 345 horsepower races. And now, my friends, it's time to have a go at the final National Challenge race, a 345 horsepower race at Trial Mountain. And you just saw one on your screen. This race has a number of Lotus Elisas in it, which if you're familiar with those cars, are extremely light. The thing about horsepower restrictions is that it doesn't matter what the car weighs, and so when you have a boat like a GTR versus potentially 300 horsepower Lotus Elises on a track that is not a high-speed track like Midfield Raceway, you can see where there might be a problem. And so, let's see what happens. I'm just going to see if the GTR can handle it. Fortunately, I'm pretty familiar with this track, even though it doesn't look like it with the way I'm wiggling back and forth. This track is in Gran Turismo 7. It's not an exact copy, but it's close enough to where you're familiar enough with what's going on. I just absolutely abused that TVR there, so I guess I deserve what might happen in the future. So we're behind these two Elises. I'm in a somewhat powerful car, and they're pulling away from me on the backstretch. And I'm thinking, if I can't catch them here, either I need the AI to be really bad, or I'm not going to be able to catch them at all. I brake really late and slam into the back of this Elise. Absolutely fantastic driving for me, by the way. But the Elise pulls away. I don't gain a position. Both Elises pull away, and there's one right behind me as well. We come over the hill. The AI gets it all sorts of wrong, but so do I. And then the TVR rides me through the corner like a guardrail, just like I did it earlier. There goes another release, and I'm in P5 coming into one of the final corners. I'm hardly on the podium. I have to win this race. So this is the main difference between this game and Gran Turismo 7. This is a high-speed chicane as opposed to the really slow one. I slam the TVR again and get airborne and end up smacking the back of the green Elise, but it doesn't matter because I didn't gain a position. Fortunately, contact is handled pretty well here. Look, I'm driving really awfully. This is just absolutely abysmal driving by me. So we go through this left-hander. I have to slow way down. The red Elise in front just gains and gains and gains, but there's an Elise behind me that wants to attack as well and comes flying through on the left-hander through the tunnel. You can see how light these Elises are compared to this boat GTR that I'm driving. And the GTR just does not have enough power to make up the difference. So here we have a right-hander right before the tunnel leading into the long tunnel. I gain a little bit of ground on the green Elise. Try to keep it tight to the left there. I might have hit the green Elise again and we go on the backstretch, but I already know it's not going to be enough. And I know that, but I'm going to try and finish out this race. Maybe the AI makes a mistake. I try to brake as late as I can down into second gear for this long left-hander. You can see I gained some time on the red Elise, and I hit third gear and it kind of bogs down, and the red Elise pulls away as we do a little bit of a right-left over the crest of the hill into that right-hander. The red Elise gets it slightly wrong, but I can't take advantage. You can see in my mirror there's all sorts of carnage going on behind me. Just a couple turns left, down into this slow left-hander. Can't gain time. It's going to be really hard to gain any time on this Elise here. And then we go into the final chicane where I am too far behind to gain time. I do gain some time. I really send it, and I sent it too hard and slammed into the wall. And so that's a P2. I have to win in order to move on. And so I'm thinking to myself, I legitimately don't know if this car is going to work. And as I said before, I'm down to one other backup car. The station wagon will absolutely not work here. So what do? I decide to try it one more time, and at the end of lap 1, disaster strikes once again. I slam into the wall, and that's when I know this car isn't going to work. I am down to my last car. At this point in the run, I had done this over several days. I think this was actually a week after I had started it. I had done a lot of research on the prize cars, on how powerful they were, things like that. I didn't have many options left. I had one option left. I might have actually had two options left, but one was definitely a worse version of the car that I wanted, and I knew that wouldn't work either. So, I am essentially down to my last car. And I will say, I'm 99.9% sure this was my last car. It's entirely possible I missed something. When you're looking at a bunch of lists and all these other things, sometimes you just glaze over something that was obvious, but I am fairly certain this was my last car. So we're going to speed through some more menuing here as I try to figure out what races I can do, what prize cars I have left, etc., etc. And eventually I am going to settle on the Mines Lancer Evolution 5 to have a go at the Super Touring Car Trophy. 490 plus horsepower in a 413 horsepower car. Fortunately, it's not very heavy, but it's not a touring car, and it's certainly not a racing modified car, to try and get a car that I hope my last chance at beating a 345 horsepower challenge is going to come down to potentially the Evo 5 winning a touring car race. And as we jump ahead to lap 2, disaster strikes once again. I slam into the back of the Civic in front of me, I go off the track, and to me, that violates essentially the attempt to be clean at this game. And I also decide, you know what, DJ, stop being a moron, go get a better car for this, and then we can try this race again. So this time I settle on the R390, and we're going to head over to the Grand Touring Car Trophy, which is a separate entity from the Super Touring Car Trophy, to get another car, but this car is one that I think Gran Turismo 7 fans will appreciate. 394 horsepower at Red Rock Valley, and as you can expect, it was an easy victory for the R390 once again. So, what car do we get this time? So, this car, I'm actually not sure if it was in GT Sport or not, but I chuckled a bunch when I saw that it was included in Gran Turismo 7. It's a Daishin Silvia. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but you may notice it looks a little familiar. I'm sure if we took the livery off and painted it white, you would see that it looks a lot like the Group 4 Silvia that Nissan has in Gran Turismo 7. Don't know why that's in the game, but I find it hilarious, and I personally love the car because it has a horn. So we hop over to the Super Touring Car Trophy, and as you can imagine, and you can see on the minimap on the bottom left, super easy victory for the Silvia. And so this car, which we're about to check out in just a minute, is my last hope, and it is the TRD 3000 GT. It has a little bit more power, a little bit less weight than the GTR I was using before, and I'm going to take this car and I'm going to give it a whirl at Trial Mountain. This is pretty much my last hope. If this car doesn't work, I either need to practice a lot or the challenge isn't possible. We're at the point where it's either this or I fail. So here we go, Trial Mountain in the TRD 3000 GT. The thinking here was that with the slightly better power to weight ratio and the fact that it's rear wheel drive would give me a little bit of a pace edge compared to the GTR. We swing through the beginning of the S's, barging my way through like a true Gran Turismo player. Getting to the end of the S's, we're already into P1 for at least the moment. See how it goes as we go through the tunnel. It's so hard to drive on pad, especially with the D-pad. Fighting with a car just to my left, you can't really see it. Sneak in on the right, and I kind of bulldoze it out of the way. Not really intentionally. So hard to control these cars. It's a lot easier to be smooth on the wheel. Here we go, into this tunnel, and then the long tunnel around the left-hander. You can see I've developed quite a gap now. As we pull away, I'm thinking, you know what? I think this car can do it. And as we fast forward ahead to the end of the race, we did it. This car was good enough. And so, my friends, this video's gone on long enough, and so I do just want to say that the challenge is basically over. I still have one more car to get, but I can use the Super Silhouette and it will be quite easy. The race at Trial Mountain was the final hurdle. The rest of it really was drama-free, and since we are well over an hour at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and give the video outro now. Yes, this is possible. It is possible to beat Gran Turismo 2 without spending a single credit. If you liked the video, if you want to see more, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment. Was this video too long? Was it, is there anything I could change? Any feedback is really, truly appreciated. We've done impossible challenges for Gran Turismo 1 and 2, so you know what that means. Next up, Gran Turismo 3. We'll probably try the same thing. Can we beat Gran Turismo 3 without spending a single credit? Now, with that said, just to prove I completed the challenge, please enjoy this musical montage of races. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!